Hi, everyone. It's really nice to have you join us this evening. I've enjoyed these panels over the semesters, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the discussion this evening. And I'm also really happy to have current students, whether they are program alums or in the middle of the program, join us and bring their perspective forward and bring your perspective forward, hopefully, as well. So what I want to highlight is, as you're finishing Vantage Point, there are two things that I'll ask you to keep in mind, and you'll see my name in your inbox coming up a few times at the end of this semester and going forward. One of them is a more immediate opportunity, and that is a program called the UH Student Fellowship Program. So when we first started Vantage Point a number of semesters ago, or a number of years ago now, we became really excited by the projects that students were working on, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to keep working on them in some way, and to do it with some funding. And that's what the fellowship program does. It is a 2-semester fellowship program, and you get $500 over 2 semesters if you are chosen for the program, to continue working on the project that you started in Vantage Point. We've been doing this for several semesters now and have a number of really wonderful projects to highlight. Anybody who comes to the send-off and honors banquet at the a little bit later in this semester is going to see some posters representing some of the really wonderful things that our students have been working on and some of their ideas. So please keep that in mind. The call for applications will go out really at the end of the semester. We want you to get finished with your projects first and then submit them. And you'll have into a little bit into January to send those in. The other thing I'll mention is we have what's called a realization award. And what we want to do with this award and what we do with this award is we recognize students who continue taking steps on their projects, who really hit it out of the park. They have an idea, they go out and they work on it in some really very real, kind of practical type of way. And we get really happy to hear about the things that they end up doing essentially as they continue on with their work. So please know that we are very interested in the work that you're doing, and we look forward to you submitting your work, hopefully continuing to work on it with us. And please, when I send those messages, there's always an invitation for you to send me questions if you have any. So I hope you'll do that. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Satelmajer. So now for the folks you've come to hear from, and we'll get started with some questions for them. First, brief bios. So Annie, Elonna, Morgan, all class of 2020. So on their way out of the program, as we know today, when this program was being launched. So UH, we used to call it new UH. You don't need to call that because we've been at this for 6 years now. But so they were on the way out when we were on the way in. So it's really poetic to have this group with us. I can't thank you all enough for being here with us and spending the time. So you all, I imagine, have some memory of when that was happening. And I wonder if anyone would be willing to talk about that briefly. If you knew the program was changing.
Yeah, I can jump in. I remember, well, one, it was a little bit crazy because COVID was happening, the program was changing, there were a lot of things going on at once. But I remember, I think I attended an information session about the program changing when they had first announced it. And mostly I was like, oh, I hope it'll be a good program for, for the new students coming in because we were about to be on our way out. Um, so yeah, I don't know too much about how the program has changed and flourished in the 6 years since we've graduated from undergrad, which I can't believe that it's been that long, especially since I haven't seen either of you in 6 years, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I remember when they announced it and people were excited. People were like, what's going on? But I'm glad that it's still, here and thriving 6 years later.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Morgan. So students, this is also a really poetic moment because you're learning a little bit about what it was like before and hopefully have a better context for what you're now able to do in UH. So thank you for that reflection, Morgan. I also would love to get you talking about the fact that you all know each other, all class of 2020, and you know each other. You want to share a little bit about you, how you interacted when you were here?
So I'll say for me that I know Morgan. So Morgan and I had a lot of mutual friends in college. And I think the beauty of college is that it's pretty easy for mutual friends to lead into these kind of tertiary relationships. So even though Morgan has mentioned that this is her first time seeing us in 6 years, we always make sure to have a little bit of time to check in with each other, even if that's just responding to each other's Instagram stories, randomly texting and checking in. So that's a connection that we've kind of kept, even though it's just not as close as we've gone into a full grown adult grown woman life.
Amazing. So, friendships from UH that hold on the test of time. Fantastic. So, another lesson for students: make your friends, make good friends. They last. It's beautiful. You're also, one way or another, all of you serving the public good. And I'm going to talk about that now in your little bios. You're doing really concrete work and serving the public in amazing ways. Morgan, let's begin with you because you were an honors ambassador. And I did know that you were interviewed for the Diamondback about the changeover of the program. So I am very glad you jumped in and brought that up. So after AUH and UMD, you went on to Georgetown Law. Then you started your career living out your passion for criminal justice as an intern. And you did a few of those sorts of gigs, right? Brady Against Gun Violence, an extern for the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Open Horizon Criminal Justice Fellow at the Council for Court Excellence. You were then a legal fellow and are now legal counsel at the Bail Project. Yeah. And that is the nonprofit organization combating the incarceration principle behind the money bail system by providing free cash bail assistance for folks who need it. Would you just say a little bit about that work and what brought you to it?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I had always been interested in criminal legal reform, and even before I got to law school, when I came to UMD, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I was very fortunate to be able to take classes in CCJS and criminal justice, and criminology, and I also was a psychology double major. So for me, I knew it was something I was interested in. I knew I wanted to go to law school from a pretty young age. So once I got to UMD and actually learned a lot more about how, all the different ways that our system was broken, all the ways that people are made to suffer inside of it,
Yeah.
it just really affirmed for me that this was an area that I wanted to work in, and this is an area that I wanted to bring reform into. So yeah, I got the opportunity to work in a bunch of different organizations, and I was fortunate enough to even be able to come back to the Bill Project when I was first there after my second year of law school during the summer, and then I saw that there was an opening after my fellowship ended, and it worked out that it came around full circle. So here I am.
Fantastic. Thank you. And just to kind of round out the fullness of you a little bit, you can be seen watching movies and Broadway shows and spending time with your cat Pansy. Yeah. Okay. And you were a flautist at UMD. Is that right? Great.
Yes, I played in the Gamer Symphony Orchestra for my junior and most of my senior year, but COVID came and canceled my final concert.
Oh,
But I'm always happy to talk about GSO. So if you have more questions, let me know. But I had so much fun doing that in undergrad. And my only regret is that I wish I had joined sooner.
that's great. Thank you for that. So also sort of extensive campus engagement in the time that you were here and making the most of college. Um, Alana, in terms of campus leadership, you were an RA, yeah?
Yes, I was also activism chair for the NAACP chapter, later
Amazing.
became president as well. And I did mock trial.
Wow. Okay. Great. And all that combined, you self-describe as a public servant dedicated to your hometown of Baltimore City through every step of your professional career. And I know some of our current students can relate to some of what you shared about your time at UMD, first generation college student working full time, commuting from Baltimore, then the RA gig that got you to campus. That's fantastic. And you brought this grit to serve the public alongside just a host of celebrities, Chuck Schumer, Senator Van Hollen, and now you're senior advisor for state and federal affairs in the office of Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott. Amazing. Would you say a little bit about that work?
Yeah, so I knew pretty much as soon as I did my first internship on the Hill, which was for, at that time, Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger. He retired, and so Congressman Johnny Olszewski is now in that seat for Maryland's 2nd District. Dutch Ruppersberger was actually my representative before they did redistricting.
Oh,
But I think my experience, and that happened my sophomore year of college, going into my spring semester, so finishing up going into my junior year, it really solidified, I think, the work that can be done at the community level, but with the nexus of federal government. I think even though we hear a lot about federal government, those are the races that are most, publicized, politicized. Ultimately, figuring out how the bigger aspect of government can work to affect people's quality of lives at the local level was something I was really interested in. And I think that I was able to gain a really positive experience in seeing how that essentially how that work came into play. And initially as an intern, that was maybe listening to constituents, complain about certain issues. We had regulars that would call every day. Sometimes they just wanted to be heard. But ultimately for the people that really needed help, even if that came from having these relationships with local elected officials and with different community organizations in the district, still being able to leverage resources to help people. And so I've been kind of squarely interested at the place where local policy and federal policy meet since my sophomore year of college.
Wow. That feels like it must be just really tough work right now. So thank you for that. And when you are not serving, or maybe even when you are, because it sounds like you just serve in a whole variety of ways, you are writing and self-publishing poetry. Is that right?
Yes, actually, one of the university honors classes I had taken was creative writing. I think it was Professor Playdell. I can't quite remember her name. I think that's who it was. But I've liked writing since I was younger and had always been like a really avid reader. And I really like poetry and music. So I ended up self-publishing a poetry book with a kind of amalgamation of poems that I had started writing in 2018 and finished up in earnest in 2020. And it just took me a long time to hype myself up to put it out there because art is really personal. And I think poetry in particular is something that really comes deeply from experiences. So I was able to self-publish that almost 2 years ago now. So I will be working on trying to do like some community events and really feeding that part of myself outside of being a public servant.
Great. And part of the self-publishing is really to have control over your words. Is that right? You're not working with an editor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you didn't say this in your bio, but you are 30 under 30 in 2025.
I
Right.
was. Yes.
Yeah. There's one in every UH alum group, I can tell you. That's right. That's right. So aspire to that, everybody. Amazing. Oh, and you're learning Greek. I mean, we can all aspire to that. Amazing. Okay, Annie, you're also homegrown and also still local. And like many of our students here this evening, you were born and raised in Montgomery County, the MoCo show. Then you went on to law school in Baltimore and came right back to work for Montgomery County as assistant county attorney. Incredible. So from a degree in operations management, you pivoted to law. I have to talk a little bit more about that. And you now practice in the areas of finance and government procurements. So am I right that this is all about the proper use of taxpayer money, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we love you for that. Also public service, and so happy you work in Montgomery County where I live, and you spend your free time taking long walks, reading, and baking. Also near and dear to some of us in UH. So could you share a little bit more, A, about the work that you do, and B, about the pivot?
Sure. So in terms of the pivot, I think so operations management is housed within the business school. And up until I want to say junior year summer, I was kind of in between law school and going into business or going into consulting. I had gotten an internship at Booz Allen Hamilton. I thought, okay, this is where I'm gonna consulting is a very common path, I think, for Smith students. But it just didn't like hit. I don't really know how else to explain that. I think the important thing is whatever is bringing you joy and bringing you passion is what you should follow. And so I thought, you know what, let me take the LSAT and let me see how this goes. And so pivoting to law, I think I realized that law school is a lot more than just what you think you see on TV, hear about on podcasts, read about in the news. I think law is one of those um, careers that really allows you to find a niche, whether it be criminal justice like Morgan, whether it be local government, municipal government like Alana, whether it be business. There's a whole area of business law that's out there. And so I kind of followed what I thought was going to match my personality, where I wanted to see my life in 5, 10 years. And I really thought that that was public service. And so I thought, you know what, maybe I don't know what kind of law I want to do yet, but I know I want to be doing public service.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I navigated the rest of college, which was cut short by COVID, obviously, but also law school. And so I spent a lot of time in internships, summer positions, and also my post-law school job looking for public service positions. So I was up in Baltimore with the Maryland Office of the Attorney General for a summer. I was at the Department of the Navy Office of General Counsel for a summer. I was with Social Security Administration for a semester and their Inspector General, kind of like the watchdog part of SSA. And then after law school, I got a job with the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. I was not doing tax law. I was doing government contracts. And then, I spent some time there. It didn't seem like it was where I could see myself starting my legal career. So I pivoted and now I'm back in Montgomery County. I am still doing government contracts, but the thing about local government, which I think Alana will definitely know, is that local government, even though it seems smaller than states and the Fed, it is a whole host of things that you would never even think of because it's affecting constituents. And so I'll deal with all kinds of questions. I'll deal with who needs to be charged the hotel tax because there is a tax for hotels. Or if the Department of Health and Human Services for Montgomery County needs to hire people to hold, I guess, like health clinics out in the community, and we need translators or something. How do we buy that? And so I'm still using business generally, but now it's in the law perspective. And what I love about that is that I'm in public service. And so I feel like I'm really contributing to my community. And so I guess in terms of the pivot, it wasn't really the area of my career, but it was just where am I serving? And so that's what, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for that clarification, because that's a really beautiful way to put it. And it also, all of you, I think, are lessons in just how many places anything can take you. And so you follow your passion, you do what makes sense to you, you do what's meaningful, and you find all sorts of ways to apply it to all sorts of public good. So really amazing. Thank you for your stories. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you do. So I'm gonna ask just a couple of questions that I feel like students are thinking about, and one of them comes directly from some of the student input. And again, this is in the spirit of, oh, the places you'll go, and thinking back to what are the skills I need? How do I prepare as a sophomore to get myself there? It feels early to start thinking about those things, but how do I do it so that by the time I'm a senior, I'm positioned to kind of make good decisions for myself, have options, and what will pay dividends later in life? And I think you've already given us a real intro to what that feels and looks like. But let me ask it this way. I think everyone here is kind of eager to know if you feel UH positively impacted your future life. And I know we had a class already. Alana already told us the poetry, in a sense, comes from creative writing. But let's start there. So besides the poetry class, can you share one thing about from your time in UH? In other words, adding on this certification to the major that you knew you wanted to do, giving your time to it because it is hard to fit that into your schedules. You did that. How did it impact your ability to thrive? And when you look back, what do you take from it? Morgan, you want to jump in first?
Sure. I mean, one class that I can immediately think of, well, I'll think of two, is I also did a creative writing class when I was a UH student, which so much fun. I've always enjoyed writing. So that was a lot of fun. And I did a
And
class
sorry,
on,
Morgan, this was neither of your fields, right? So you were
no, it's
invited to
totally
take this class
yeah,
outside.
totally
Gotcha.
unrelated. I just thought it was interesting. And I also took a class on political theater, which was super fun. it re-sparked my love of musicals and musical theater. And I'm in New York, so I'm always going to see shows and keeping up with what's coming out and whatnot. Um, but I mentioned those two classes specifically to say that I think it's really important to take advantage of just all the different opportunities you have to make yourself into not only a more well-rounded student, but I think just a more well-rounded person that's moving through the world. When you're taking classes for your major and you're interning and externing and trying to soak up all the experiences that you can, I think it's really important to not only think of the activities and the clubs and the classes that will, of course, move you closer toward your goals, but also think of the things that will feed, the non-academic necessarily related interests that you have and the things that, are exciting and cool and interesting that the college and, the people around you have to offer. For me, UH, not only the classes are really interesting, but I've met some really wonderful people and people that I'm still in contact with, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years later after we started college, we finished college. I just think it's so important to not only pursue your academic, your professional goals, but also to take advantage of things that make you a more well-rounded person moving through the world because there's so much happening in the world. There's so many heavy things. And I think it's important not only to just focus on the ways you can make the world better, but also ways to feed yourself because if you're not able to feed all the parts of yourself, it's going to be a lot harder to do the things that you're interested in. And especially public service, it's not an easy job. A lot of us are tired and we're, working hard and all these things. Um, but getting to be able to feed the things that I'm interested in outside of, my passion for the law and for criminal legal reform, I think was so important. And I feel like it just gave me a really great foundation to make sure that I'm still, doing things that I enjoy and learning for the sake of learning and not just because it might, be something to put on a resume later. Of course, UH is like a great academic opportunity, and I was glad that I did it. But I also was really thankful for the opportunity to learn all types of new things and meet really interesting and wonderful people while doing it. So yeah, I had a great time.
Thanks for starting us off that way. Would anyone like to jump in with an anecdote about UH, the positive impact and or what you did to make sure you stayed whole and well-rounded in college? Either one. I'm excited about both. I think it's exciting about either one.
I think one thing I would say about UH is that at least when we were here, right, a lot of the other programs, the other honors programs were very narrow. Like
Yes.
they had a certain concentration. I'm showing my age, but there was one that was super like into science, right? And they lived in La Plata, and that's all I can remember about it. But I think
That's
the great thing
ILS.
about, yes, ILS,
Mhm.
right? The great thing about UH is that when you have a certain major, obviously you're going to have classes geared toward that major. And UH gives you the ability to explore something different or exercise some muscles that you're not going to exercise in your major. So, for example, with me, when I was in the business school, you have like the base level English gen ed requirement that you have to meet. And that's kind of it. I wasn't really writing in business school. And if you like that, I totally get it. But sometimes I feel like majors can make you feel like you're kind of boxed in. It's like, this is what I'm doing for 4 years and the rest of my life. But UH really gives you an opportunity to try some different classes, to build other skills that you might not think you need for your technical job later on, but it's going to make you really stand out. So, like, for example, with, I guess, business school, right? I wasn't doing a lot of writing, but I took a course called Literary Maryland. I don't know if they still offer that, but it's all about books, plays, music set in Maryland, and you would have to write about it. Um, and so that really was my one time kind of that semester to exercise my creative brain and be around people who were also interested in it and hear from TAs or professors who were able to give me feedback on it that I might not meet over at the business school. So I think UH is great about that. It really, it's just a semester. Try something new, right? Because you might not, it's harder to find opportunities to step outside of your comfort zone after college or when you're working because learning takes time, right? And it takes resources and a lot of things that you might not have outside of college. So I would really encourage you to take advantage of that.
That's great. By the way, we don't necessarily teach that class, but Dr. Satelmajer teaches the built environment in DC. So another kind of locally grown class, I'm happy to say. Terrific. I also would love to get you chatting about, and I think we've touched on this already, but I amplify a little bit. You did a lot of internships in clerking. So your pathways were began really with kind of various forms of employment that weren't kind of regular jobs, but got you in there, got you learning and putting the time in to gain experience. So how important is an internship? And what would you say you got out of that?
Uh, I'll jump in here. I'll say that internships are very important for me specifically. One of the reasons I chose UMD is because of its proximity to DC. At the time when I was matriculating into college, I didn't really know too much about the Hill. What I did know is that I wanted to work in government because since I had been 10 years old, I figured as I was learning about the president, as I was learning about the different branches of government, as I was hearing things about what the city government landscape looked like, I was obviously a 10-year-old and a young child who thought about a lot of things. But I figured that government was really the way to help change the communities that I had lived in up until that point in my life, all around the city, because myself, my mom, and my sisters, we did move around a lot. I had a single parent who was raising me and my sister. So um, it just seemed like many things stayed the same no matter where we were moving in the city. And so I knew that I wanted to do government. University of Maryland was super close to DC. And I did know there was a Hill. I didn't know what one did on the Hill, but I knew it would be a good place to get my feet wet as far as experiences. And the Hill wasn't the only place I entered. I think it's also important to note that I think even doing internships where you are not sure if you'll like it, if you're not sure if it aligns with your end goal at that moment with what you want to do, I think finding out what you don't like is equally as important as finding out what you do like or confirming what you do like. For example, I did an internship on the Hill where I was a scheduling assistant. I did that pretty much right out of college in 2020. The job market was horrible. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start interning again. And hopefully some of those experiences a little bit more recently on my resume will help me get a full-time position on the Hill. And I do think that paid off, but I was really going for anything because I really just wanted to reacclimate myself with the Hill because at that point I had done campaign work and I had done research work at a nonprofit through UMD called the Judge Alexander Williams Center. Um, and when I was a scheduling intern, I was like, oh, I hate this. I absolutely hate this. But I was so glad that I did it in the setting of an internship versus being so eager to just get on the Hill that I went out for a scheduling assistant position and then ended up in this long-term position that I hated. So I think internships are really great opportunities to kind of flirt with what you want to do professionally without fully committing.
Great. It's great. It's not the permanent thing you do, it's just the first thing you do. And so take some risks. Beautiful. Avril and Katie, I want to turn it over to you. Get some student voices in here. Avril, you want to jump in?
Sure, I can go first. So, the first question, a question that I had was, what advice would your senior year self give to your sophomore year self?
I think if I had to give advice to my younger self, I think just the importance of being flexible because obviously none of us knew that the pandemic was coming when we were sophomores. And that obviously upended like a lot of just the world as we knew it. Um, and I feel like, at least for myself, I won't speak for Annie and for Ilana, but I'm like super type A. Like I'm, calendaring everything and making to-do lists, and I'm like super, if you didn't send me a calendar invite 3 days in advance, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Like I'm that kind of person. Obviously the pandemic started and that really just upended a lot of things, and it just led to so much uncertainty. And I feel like, you know, being able to be a little bit more flexible, be a little bit more adaptable, be like, okay, it's gonna be fine, even if you don't know exactly what your calendar is gonna say like a week or two out from now, or even just if things don't go exactly the way that you think that they're gonna go. Because I feel like, at least for me, when I came to college, like I had a very like particular view of how my life was going to go. Like I'm going, I'm going to law school, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I didn't end up in exactly the position that I thought I was going to end up in now that I'm, post grad, and a licensed attorney and practicing. So I think just being more flexible, being more adaptable, and knowing that even if things don't go exactly to plan, it's still going to work out fine. You're still going to end up exactly where you're meant to be. I think that would have saved past me a lot of stress.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a tough
thank
moment.
you.
For me personally, being a first generation college student, my sophomore year was particularly difficult. I came in from, top 8% of the class, gave my high school like graduation address, to being placed in remedial math my freshman year because I have math testing anxiety. So I think that really created a shift for me, um, as an overachiever from high school. And even though I would definitely classify myself as someone who had grit, I think that college is really just a whole different ball game, and not being able to um, have in-house, and by in-house, quite literally in my home, people to lean on for that support because they had matriculated and graduated through college. That was really, really difficult for me. I got like and when I say under 4.0, I mean like I got a 2.5, I think, and maybe like a 2.0 at some point in my collegiate career, but I later on graduated and got like 3.5 cumulatively. So I really worked my way out of that kind of space where I felt like it was failure. There were so many different points in time between my freshman year and my sophomore year where I felt like I was going to give up because school was just so hard for me because I was working full time. I was commuting. There was a point in time where I wasn't commuting. So I moved closer to campus, but I didn't have a car. I still had to work. I would walk 40 minutes early in the morning and do like a 5 to 9 shift at the Panera in Beltsville. And then quickly go back home. Well, not that quickly. If I had money for an Uber, I would take it, or I would walk 40 minutes back um, to where I lived. And then I would get ready and go to the Hill. And I was still taking 15 credits at that point. And then later on, my sophomore year, right before my junior year, my father passed away, and that was really, really hard. It was unexpected. He passed away of an overdose. So that really was a moment where I could have given up for college. And I think that what really helped me was the fact that I had started to become vulnerable with the village I had created and all of these adults around me who were a lot more established than I was at that point in my life. And being able to say, hey, I need help. Because I feel like ultimately what I learned, what I didn't know as a freshman, is that, and also as somebody who was an eldest sister and, first generation college student, very used to doing everything on my own, not asking for help. Um, I realized that nobody really knows what's on your plate unless you show them your plate and ask for help clearing it. And I consider myself a strong advocate for myself, but I think college really, I think it really strengthened that in me. So I think my senior self would tell my sophomore self, you are going to make it out of this so much better than the way you started and the way that you think it may go right now.
Katie, do you want to jump in with your question? Maybe Annie, you can respond first to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of pings off of what we just asked, but I was wondering, what is one thing you know now that you had wish you had known then? And I don't know if there's a different message that you can convey that is separate from what you would tell your sophomore year self.
Sure. I think, well, I guess it's kind of twofold, right, between those two questions. But I think something that I wish I knew back then was that I didn't have to know exactly what I was going to do post-college or whether I was going to go to law school. I think that's something that can put a lot of pressure on you in college. You think that you have to know exactly what you're going to do, what job you want post-college. That's going to line up the internships that you look for and the classes you take. I actually don't think that's necessarily the case. I think the best thing that you can do for yourself, because you're in such a fluid time of your life, because college is so fun and you get to like try all these different things with people who are also figuring it out at the same time too. I think the best thing that you can do is explore, right? But try to do as well as you can in whatever you're exploring. Put yourself in the best position that you can so that, when you're looking at whatever you're going to be doing after college, you can kind of craft a story about what you did in college, right? You can say, I tried this, and that led me to here. That taught me this. Because I don't think it's reasonable for you to, and when I say you, I'm talking about me because I thought I had to figure it out back then too, but I don't think it's reasonable for someone between the ages of 18 to 22, or even now, right, to know exactly what they're going to do post-college. So that's one thing I think I wish I knew, is that I didn't need to know that I was going to be going to law school. All I had to do was focus on what I'm doing this semester, do as best as I can, and then afterward, I'll figure it out from there. Obviously, keeping in mind that having direction is very helpful and, preferred, but you shouldn't feel wedded to whatever you're learning in college, because I took a lot of marketing classes, a lot of management classes. I have I haven't touched it since college. And that's okay. But I try to do as best as I could back then so that, with you, when you go to law school, they look at your GPA and your LSAT score. So that's kind of what I was focusing on. Just being able to put my best foot forward and figuring it out along as I go. And I'm still doing that too, I'm only, oh geez, I'm almost 2 years out of law school, but I'm still figuring out what I like. And I think that's fine. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to start us off with a student question that came again from the group that's listening to us, and thank you all for hanging in there with us. We've got about 15 minutes left, and I think these two, I'm going to ask two, and I think they go together. How do you gain experience as a student to help with a career when you've never worked before? So what are the ways, and I think, Annie, you kind of led us to this question. What are the ways you put together experience besides just I had jobs, which is sort of what resumes appear to want from you? What are the other ways you do it? And what skills count the most post-grad? So I think we can also be really kind of unclear or sometimes wrong-headed in college about what skills are going to count later. Anybody want to tackle those questions for us?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think in terms of the skills, there are certain technical skills that you're going to learn in your classes, whether that's, if you're taking statistics, you're going to learn how to, do certain equations, certain things. If you're, taking this class and that class and whatnot, like you're going to gain those sorts of technical skills. But I think the skills that have served me the most as I've been moving through law school and now as a legal professional is a lot of the soft skills, that things that maybe you're not going to learn explicitly in a classroom, but, how to answer emails, how to interact in an office setting, how to, ask questions if you need help with something, um, how to stay organized, how to manage your time. And at least for me, time management has been the biggest skill that I have used throughout both my academic and my professional careers, because college, grad school, and then post grad, you're always going to have 5 million things going on, whether that's, in your personal life, at work. And I think just being able to manage your time, making sure you're doing, you have enough time to work on a deliverable, making sure you have enough time, enough gas in the tank to do things in your personal life. I think that is like the most valuable skill that I could have gained from being in college, being in grad school, and now as a practicing attorney. And just, a lot of the kind of soft people management skills I think have also been very useful, because everybody wants to work with somebody who is, you want to be competent and good at your job and all of those things, but I have worked with a bunch of different people since my first job was I worked at Five Guys when I was like 15 years old to now I'm legal counsel at the Bail Project. And, being good at your job is great, super, super helpful, but it also really helps if you're personable and, you're easy to get along with and you're a good brainstorming partner and all these sorts of things. Like you answer emails timely. If you need help, if someone needs help, you're happy to jump in. Those sorts of like soft skills I think are incredibly valuable in like an academic setting, but especially in a professional setting. So I feel like even if, maybe you don't have a ton of work experience yet, maybe you're still, trying to land your first internship or your first job or what have you, but these are the types of skills that you don't necessarily need to be in the workforce or doing an internship to be working on. Like you can be in class working on that right now because you want to make sure, if maybe somebody next to you needs something, if your professor, needs something from someone in the class, if you just even want to make sure you can build a relationship with the professor so that you can ask for a letter of rec down the line if you're thinking about applying to any type of graduate program. I feel like those are the types of things that you can start building from day one and you don't necessarily need to, have an official work title or something fancy on your resume to be able to practice those things from the beginning. And I think it just makes a huge difference, not only for your own professional life and your, academic life and also all those sorts of things, but the people around you as well. And it makes people want to work with you and think of you when opportunities and other exciting things come up.
Fantastic. Avril, Katie, you want to grab a question from the list and share it on behalf of one of our audience members?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask from the list, what is something that is hard about professional life that is different from student life? Or if you want to do the reverse, what is something that's great about professional life that is different from student life? That's good too.
I can go. I think something that's great about professional life versus student life is that for the most part, obviously it depends on your job, right? But for the most part, you go in, you do your work, and then when you get home, there is no homework. There are no papers, there are no projects. You have your weekends, and that's kind of nice, right? It feels very siloed. Obviously, if you work in more stressful positions, that might not always be the case. Like for big law firms, that's not the case. I'm not there, but power to them. Something that I think is challenging though about professional life is that I guess with college, you have semesters or maybe a year and you have a class and okay, this is my beginning, this is my end. This is what is expected of me. It's all going to culminate in a final exam or a project or a thesis. Work is not like that. It's more fluid. And it can be kind of tough because it's like, I don't know where things are going to go after this or what's going to pop up. I don't have a syllabus. I don't know what's expected of me. In college, you have a professor who hopefully is very clear about their expectations and you know exactly how they're going to grade you. Work is not like that. And so I think in some ways work is more structured because you have your 9 to 5 and then your post 9 to 5. But in a lot of ways, you kind of have to figure out where you're going to go from here with work. So do you see yourself staying in this position for a year or two, or is this where you see yourself staying long term, or do you want to change? Do you want to learn something different, go into a different field? So that can be tough. A lot of it has to come internally. A lot of that motivation has to come internally. But overall, having the time to yourself after work is very nice. So you have that to look forward to.
Going off of what Annie said, and it not work, the professional life not necessarily having kind of this end goal or culmination of what you're supposed to do. I would take that another way in talking about dealing with difficult personalities or personalities that may not mesh with yours. When you were in college, you may know there's a person where you feel like, quite candidly, every time the professor asks a question, they're going to be the devil's advocate. I'm so tired of hearing that today. Now, you may have that person pop up in another class. You guys may have the same major, but with work, imagine that person, but you deal with them every day. So that is something that I would say is a little bit more difficult in professional life versus being a student. But I do think, especially with university honors, my experience in university honors, you start getting I think the classes really are able to create an environment where you are able to learn how to respectfully call someone out or respectfully disagree, because I do think a lot of the courses, at least in our time there, did have a focus on soft skills. And I think some of the first times that I was able to kind of bring to someone's attention, bring to my peers' attention that maybe this language you used in a discussion board wasn't appropriate. And maybe you're ignorant to that because college is your first time around people who have lived differently than you, whether that be a different ethnic experience, a different racial experience, a different socioeconomic experience, a different experience just because you've lived in different places. I think that university honors really created some of the first environments where I felt safe to do that and where I felt like I was supported in doing those things.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm making a list of takeaways. I'm going to read them at some point. Avril, I think we've got time for one more. You want to jump in with one more student question?
Yes. So the question I have is, what is the biggest mistake students can make in college?
We're in the theme of cautionary tales. Elonna, you got us there. So let's hear one more.
I mean, I think the biggest mistake you can make is just not putting yourself out there, because college is probably one of the very few times that you'll have in your life to be in a position where you can just try stuff for fun, because you're not paying rent, you don't have other bills to pay, you don't have, certain responsibilities and considerations that you might have later in life. You're you're close by to so many of your friends, wonderful, professors who support you and who have expertise in all types of different areas. There are so many clubs, so many sports, so many, this, that, and the third. There's so much opportunity and places for you to get involved and do things. And I feel like, there's just not going to be that many more times in your life, at least not in mine so far, where I've had all these things in like an incredibly accessible place, not to mention a walkable campus, other than, the hills on catching the bus and all the rest of that kind of thing. But like, depending on where you end up post grad, you might not be able to have certain experiences because maybe, your friends move to different locations, or maybe you move to do a grad program, or, stuff happens, life happens. You just don't have that same opportunity and all of those things in the exact same place and in an easily accessible format for you to take a hold of and take that opportunity. So I feel like, if you're just, not that anything's wrong with just going to class and going home, because, life happens, people have things that they have to deal with, etc. But I feel like there's just so much opportunity and things for you to try out, things for you to do. You can take a class one semester and be like, you know what, maybe I don't care for, this one random elective that I took because I needed to get my gen ed credit. But you never know, you might try something new and be like, actually, I really enjoyed this. Like, maybe this will be helpful to me later. Maybe it can inspire what you want to do after college. Or maybe it's just a fun experience that you have for one semester and then you can go back to, doing your major requirements and what have you. But I feel like just not putting yourself out there and taking advantage of having all these things in such a central location, I think that would be a huge mistake, because you're not going to have that opportunity, or at least as many of them in life as maybe we should. But I think while you have it, definitely get out there and do something fun. You never know if you might like it.
That's great. Annie, we've got 2 minutes. You want to jump in with another one?
I will say something really quick. I think one really big mistake that you can make leaving a job, leaving college, is not walking away with meeting somebody who you're like, I know I can count on that person. If I'm applying to a job or I'm, doing something, I know I can call on that person and they're going to vouch for me. Unfortunately, that means a lot professionally, just happening to know the right people, being able to talk to people or having someone in your corner who can vouch for your work ethic, your personality, that's definitely a goal that I would have per semester, per year. Walk away knowing one new person who are like, me and that person, we really click and we can help each other with whatever we're aspiring to do in the future. That's something I didn't do enough in college. I didn't go to office hours. I was really bad about that, and I really wish I did. So I would really encourage that you get out and meet people and build stronger relationships.
Fantastic. Thank you all. And I'm going to insist on doing it. I'm going to run through my list of takeaways, kind of classic classroom technique at the very end. And I want anyone to jump in with one that I missed. But here's what I had. Be flexible because life throws you curveballs. Class of 2020 knows that better than anybody. So you got the wisdom from the source. Ask for help. And that's going to dovetail with Annie, something that you just said, that's in fact a way to build connection and a way to find mentors. You ask for help, you benefit from it, and you grow. This is a fluid time of your life, but do as well as you can. Throw yourself into everything because you also never know what you're going to be good at it. You don't even know yet everything you're good at. You might find out you love it. Soft skills and time management, one of our famous gateway lessons. Yay. Always serve you, always forever serve you. So rack them up, learn them. Work needs to be self-directed. So how's work different from school? And this is going to dovetail with something I heard you all saying about college. College is a world made for you, but work life is not. So it's an exciting prospect, a scary prospect, but that transition is amazing and intense. And yeah, we're here this wisdom is all to help you prepare for that. You can't duck out of difficulty or difficult people in the workplace. So maybe learn those skills too. Maybe frequent people you don't love and see how that goes. You never know. This is a lesson we teach also. Assume people like you. Did everybody remember the friendship lesson from Gateway? Katie Avriel, members of the audience, that's a good one. So thank you. I think there's a wealth of knowledge and support here. We are so grateful, Annie, Morgan, Alana, and our students, Katie and Avriel, and Dr. Satelmajer, for your time tonight, for being here with us. I'm going to make an attempt right now to share a slide, which I have to be honest with you, may or may not work. In fact, yes, I've lost the slide. It's not going to work. So we're going to make sure that you all get a slide, students, in your Vantage Point seminar that's going to give you the QR code to these folks' LinkedIn pages. This is your chance to make connections, to network, to ask for help, to get some support, because it's going to stand you in great stead. So would everybody who's visible join me, unmute and join me in a warm thank you to our panelists before we end the evening. Thank you so much. Unmute. Everybody unmute.
Thank you.
Thank you. So wonderful to be here with you all. Thank you all for joining us, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening and a good weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Good night.
Hi, everyone.